Okay, basically the screen went dark. Let me tell you, the screen went dark, so I have to post two parts of the interview now because basically the screen turned off and it stopped the recording. So yeah, but anyways, I could like do. Yeah. Thanks. Basically, yeah. No, monkey. Now, I would say there's like a limit to responding. To be honest, for me, there's like a limit to be responding. Like if you're responding at a rate which is ridiculous, it shows you're just self-conscious, really. However, I it's fine to respond to criticism. I think if you get criticism, you're right to respond to it. And I'll just go upfront about criticism because one thing about criticism that I kind of enjoy is that even though some of them could be ridiculous and some of them could be good, the ridiculous ones they're very much easier to handle because it's like, oh, I could notice this really easily. So, yeah. I try to present myself as more straightforward and putting some jokes in there to, not really get a laugh, but maybe, oh, I got that joke. It's, for me, the comedy I like to use in my videos is mainly just hyperbole. And I feel like that's one of the best ways of comedy because self-deprecation, yeah, sometimes it could work, but sometimes when you're using self-deprecation and self-awareness as really a response to criticism, yeah, sure, it could help you respond to criticism. However, it doesn't really just cancel it out. Like, sure I may use some self-awareness, but I'm not really using it as a joke. Like, you can obviously tell, like, between my jokes and what I seriously mean. You can definitely distinguish that. And this was one of my criticisms with Turkey. Turkey Tom has a monotone, monotonous tone. And because of that, you can't really distinguish if he's saying a joke or if he's being serious. Because just like his Mr. Enter video, he said that Mr. Enter was a pedophile. but he didn't have any evidence to back that up. But he just said it
Oh,
was.
I have evidence right here. He subscribed to your sister.
Well, where's your evidence? You don't have a picture.
No, go look at Mr. Enter's subscriptions. He's number one. You can rank them by your favorite to least favorite. Yeah, we wouldn't want most name last name for Tom right now. That would not be good. Anybody of anything. I'm just saying. I think he, unless I'm mistaken, I think Mr. Enter is subscribed to your sister's dancing videos.
But anyways, how I personally think about comedy, personally, you should really distinguish it, because if you don't, that will end up biting you back later. Because if you say something that's like, controversial or a false statement and you're a critic, then you obviously want to make the distinction between a joke and obviously something you mean. I feel
Jeremiah,
like
as someone who's very critical of YouTube content, how would you feel if you were watching a commentary video and the person who uploaded the video, you could also hear their family like yelling at each other in the background and slamming cabinet drawers around? Would you be critical of that aspect of production, or would you kind of let that slide?
I'll kind of let it slide. Like, I know this is a question alluding to me because it happens to me in my videos and I don't really mind it, other than just skip through it and cut through it. And when I'm angry, I'm like, please stop. And then I cut back and I'm like, welcome back. Basically, how I feel about that is,
You are right, kid. If you could describe to me like what's happening right now in the house around you.
okay, basically how I'm going to describe it. Uncle is playing video games and is screaming highly because he's a gamer.
Oh, okay. Is that what your name? That is. Did he inspire you? I'm glad that he's yelling about the video game. I thought that there was some kind of dispute happening with real people. Well, I guess that's where the gamer tag comes from. Right.
Yeah. I guess.
Is there loud banging from your sister tap dancing in the other room?
Yeah, no, there isn't.
Oh. Well.
Anyways, Monkey, I have some questions for you.
Oh no! Counter interview.
Monkey, why? How?
Yeah.
What made you come up with the idea of Monkey Jones as your name?
Well, growing up in high school, my friends said that I look like a monkey because I have a very chimp-like face. So I decided to embrace it, and my nickname in high school was Monkey. Because, the word is a portmanteau of monkey and human. So I don't know if I used portmanteau right, but I said it anyway.
All right, Monkey.
Wait.
Was Emplemon's video documentary?
That sounds like Emplemon has a follow-up question for me. No, I was just trying to get that to work in my head. So use the from human. Yeah. Just insert it. Okay.
All right.
The Jones was just apropos of nothing.
Okay. Was Emplemon's video where you featured him talking about the rise, fall, and decay of Monkey Jones? Will that be happening in the future?
Well, it was supposed to happen in October of this year, but then I shaved all my hair off, so I couldn't film those super cool purple vlogs anymore, because you don't look like a cool guy when you're a bald faggot. So I'm going to have to postpone that for next year.
Well, is that like an alternative timeline?
Yeah, you could say it's an alternate timeline, yeah.
Where
but hopefully
your
the
career
timelines
falls
will
to death?
merge. What's that?
Where your career dies?
Oh, I'm hoping it'll die any second now, so I can go back to working at McDonald's.
Nerd City. How did you get the name Nerd City?
Well, no one's ever asked me that before. Okay, so I guess it's sort of a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of thing, where if you're going to make extremely critical videos about people, if you were to call the channel something like, I don't know, Content Avenger or Grim Reaper Criticism or something, then people would be like, Yeah, then people would be, they would be right away looking to take you down a notch for thinking that you're some kind of badass, you know. So you kind of want to, you want to avoid, um, you want to avoid trying to seem like you're too tough if you're going to be a critical person. You know, you probably have that right. You're calling yourself Jeremiah the Gamer, and then you just happen to be doing, you know, channel reviews.
Yeah.
So people aren't coming in thinking that you're, I don't know, some kind of Avenger or Punisher. You know, because that's the idea that a lot of these commentary channels start
Monkey, a
to get
lot
in
of
their
your
head. I
fans
think
seem to
is
think
that
I'm some sort of like a
they're
slayer of.
fixing YouTube.
NerdCity, I think he's moved on to a different question now. So,
oh, sorry. Well, I was just finishing.
if you could just knock it off, stop interrupting Jeremiah. That'd be nice.
Monkey. Basically, most of your audience seems to assume that I'm somehow a destroyer of careers.
You're somehow what?
Like a destroyer of careers. Like when it
Oh
comes
yeah,
to
no, I
like
think that's
DOS the
true. You've
Sauce
destroyed many
Master.
careers. Yeah, Turkey Tom's been losing subscribers for like the past month because of you. And Das the Sauce Boy, after your video on him, I think like his channel growth completely was decimated. And he's only made one video in the last month. I think you broke his ambition to even work on this platform.
It's like a Leafy IDUB situation. You know, you humiliated him to the point where he's probably reevaluating whether he needs to make content or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, then he's going to come back like a year and a half later in a horribly underwhelming interview with Keemstar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think Keemstar's going to interview Das the Sauce Boy? This rate he's going to interview Jeremiah. Now that we're elevating him, we're elevating his stature as he should be elevated because this kid has potential and he's going to be the next great thing. And we're just got to push him in the right direction, you know?
He has the potential to get a DM from Keemstar suggesting that he make a video about Wild Spartans or Tommy C.
Now, when it came to Turkey Tom's video, I want to move on to a different subject. Turkey Tom's response of the YouTube bandwagons, basically, he was like, alright, I think he made a major contradiction in the comments because I basically told him, you talked about trends. That's a bit hypocritical for you to talk about bandwagons, but then go on one yourself in the past and not mention it or give context to it, but just say it was a starter for the bandwagon, even though before that it wasn't, and that's a false thing to say. Basically, I'm Monkey. He Turkey Tom said that.
Did you say so? Basically, I'm Monkey. It's a good meme.
So anyway, let's get back on topic. Okay,
Is that it?
Turkey Tom. I put this in the video, not in the video, but in the comments. I told him, "Hey, it's a bit hypocritical for you to say people like me are hopping on trends by making videos about you, but you hop on trends yourself. So that shows a lot of hypocrisy." And then basically he was like, I said there's nothing wrong with talking about trends. And then I told him, well, if trends are, in your case, bandwagons at the very least, then how come it's wrong for me to talk about you? And then he was like, oh, if you talk about a trend, you're bandwagoning. And I'm like, whoa, that's a major contradiction there. And then on Discord, we said it out. I basically said that, what if you, Turkey, think that if it's oversaturated? Like, I think that's what Turkey Tom was trying to go for. However, he didn't execute it well.
No, I think it's even more malicious than that. I think that Turkey Tom was the bandwagon king. He was one of the wheels on the wagon for the longest time. But it wasn't until the bandwagon was against him that he started saying, you know what, guys, I think YouTube bandwagons, they're probably not so good.
Yeah.
He loves the bandwagon until they're bandwagoning against him. I think he's a huge hypocrite. and it's kind of disgusting.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Jeremiah, so you talked to him about sort of the differentiation between a trend and a bandwagon. So how would you sort of differentiate between the terms, or would you at all? Because I think a lot of people view them as they view trend hopping and bandwagoning as sort of synonyms. So I was wondering how you
I
make
would
that
agree.
distinction.
I would definitely agree that it's like the synonyms because trend hopping is where you talk about a popular topic that is getting major exposure and then you're trying to get views off of it, right? And then
That's
basically a
correct.
bandwagon does the same thing. Capitalize on a popular topic, talk about it for views. And let me just say this, if Turkey Tom wasn't assuming that my video was for views and he just said that it was bad criticism, then I would have been fine with that. But he alluded to it being a bandwagon video, which sounded like him playing the victim. And then basically he said that nothing bad ever happened to me. I'm not playing the victim, even though that wasn't the context I was using it in. I feel like the context I was using the phrase play the victim in was that when he's playing the victim, when somehow right now, just like you said, Monkey, when he's getting criticized in a bandwagon, even though he's been on the left wheel of it, he's like, I think bandwagons are bad. Yet he earlier on was one of the wheels on the bandwagon. So
No, I agree with you completely. That's a very interesting point. So it would seem that, Jeremiah, you have a very negative view of YouTubers who do hop on trends for views. However, I'd like to point out that a lot of YouTubers, their entire channels are set up to talk about topical events, where if they get to an event and it's 2 weeks after that event has been relevant, then they get criticized for it. So, like our podcast that is uploading, we put up a video today about how YouTube went down for an hour. That was probably 3 months ago at this point. Well, what I wanted to say is that, Jeremiah, I'd just like to ask you about your whole sort of view on how you view the integrity of trend hopping. Is it completely irredeemable, or is it sort of necessary for YouTubers who have to make that decision in order to keep their channels afloat?
It's kind of like a love-hate relationship, really. Because when it comes to trend hopping, some people just use it to get exposure and views because they don't really care about what they're making. But then on the other side, they're talking about the trend because it could be important or it could be a very major part in the YouTube community or YouTube itself. You know, series like Content Cops, well, that's basically a YouTube impactful event now because of the fact that it's major criticism by a big YouTuber. And if you talk about it, the reason why NerdCity is an example of this. NerdCity made a video criticizing Gum, and it was basically a follow up to the Content Cop. However, the reason why he wasn't criticized for making this video, which he did kind of trend hop at the very least, uh, you could say he did that Nerd City trend hopped here, but the reason he wasn't criticized for it was because he actually cared about what was happening, while there was other YouTubers who just didn't care about it and just made Rice Gum videos until they were irrelevant. So, like Wild
So you would say that, well, I think Nerd City should respond to this because we're accusing him of being a bandwagoner. Well, I think Jeremiah was saying that since the intent of Nerd City is to actually care. Well, let's see what Nerd City start a conversation. Nerd City, okay? No, I'm just restating. Here, man. Yeah. Let him speak for himself.
Well, it is true that I would not have made a video about Rice Gum had I not watched that content comp on him. It's what put him on my radar, and watching them fight with each other created questions in my mind that I wanted to jump into and
Yeah,
research
your
or
intent was you
criticisms that I
actually
felt
cared
working.
for it. You
And,
cared.
and the way I feel the same way about when someone makes a video about something and they're sort of responding to one of the videos I've made. Like Matt Pack did a couple of videos that are using mine as a backbone, and I don't have any problem with that at all because he's adding his own layers of commentary and research to it that aren't included in mine. He's adding new things, so that's fine. And there's a second and third type of bandwagoning. One is where you'll sort of reskin the topic and, you know, include elements of the videos you're talking about and rephrase them all and sort of like present them like it's news to people. You know, there's some daily news channels that do that. There's like obviously a Drama Alert, and then more for a female audience, there's a channel called Spill. And then there's a third type of commentary that just reacts to bigger videos that come out, and I have a dimmer view of those. You know, like if you're just saying like who won, I don't like videos like that so much.
NerdCity, I want to say this real quick. When it comes to like what I do, it's kind of complicated because just like you said, what was the second version of bandwagoning or trends? I want to know that.
What was the second thing that I said? The second type of video that bandwagons?
Yeah.
One that I guess is a news type show where it's presenting what just happened to the audience who might otherwise wouldn't have heard about it.
I would say I'm like in like all three of those categories. Like you could say I'm a reaction channel, but I analyze it. You could say I basically talk about it, but then you could say I'm a news channel because I bring you new information. So it's weird, complicated.
It's
I've never watched a video that's quite like yours because it is a bit like a hot take live stream reaction because it is stream of consciousness like we were saying earlier. So I'm not sure where I would categorize it. It's a little bit like a reaction channel, I guess.
And that's truly a melting pot tapestry of a YouTube
Emplemon, how did you get your name?
I'm having so much trouble hearing everybody talking. Is anyone else having trouble?
Oh, yeah, it's
okay.
Emplemon what was the reason behind your name?
Okay, well, I'm part Asian, and in Asia they have emperors.
Yeah.
And Lemon is a play on my last name with like one letter changed. So there you go.
Dogs.
Actually, Jeremiah,
Where did I get my name? Okay. It's very just simplistic. Creating a YouTube account, trying to think of a creative name, using my last channel that I had, and then just replacing the numbers. That's it.
Why did you choose the username Jeremiah, though?
The reason why is because I got a recommendation from a Discord user saying, "Hey, you should maybe change your name." It doesn't really do much of gaming related content, and then I was like, maybe that makes sense, and I decided to change it. So yeah.
Do you just really like the name Jeremiah, or did you like is there a character that you based it off of, or what?
I would say personally it's not character, it's more of, just what makes sense.
Have you ever looked up the verse Jeremiah 7:6? The name of your channel being Jeremiah 76. Do you know what the verse is in the Bible?
No, I do not.
Okay, it just so happens to be, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm, and then that's the end.
It's really the first half of a statement. Yeah, I think that statement says a lot about.
I'm gonna look up Jeremiah 7:7 and see how that finishes. then I will let you live in this place, in the land I gave your ancestors forever and ever.
Oh, so it's a message about not oppressing people. That's pretty nice.
Particularly
That
the
really
fatherless,
represents me.
widows,
Don't
and innocent.
don't oppress others just because they have a different opinion or way of thinking from you. Like,
But to elaborate on the Bible quote, Jeremiah, how do you feel about foreigners?
how do I feel about foreign countries? I have no problem with
Or like
them.
foreign people trying to come to this country.
I don't really care for it.
Oh, okay.
Like, if there's an immigrant moving in, fine, welcome them. It's a free country after all. There's
Right.
really no problem or shame with, not wanting to be where you live, especially in especially in the place known as Monkey. What was your video of the survival guide? Sharia law. You do not want to be a woman in Sharia
Sharia
law.
law?
Yeah.
No. So you'd be like anti-Muslim immigration.
If you're a woman and you are in a Sharia law situation, well, move to America. It's much better here.
Right.
So your thoughts on the caravan that's moving through South America towards the United States? Do you feel like troops should open fire on them if they get close, or should they all be let in? Are you an open borders guy?
I think you guys are asking really politically. Well, I mean, Jeremiah's generation is the future of this country, so I'm curious to see what direction he's going. I don't know. Maybe he has very nuanced political views. Generation Z continues to surprise me every single day, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
But
he's watching what's happening in the world right now, and in 7 years it's going to affect his vote. So I'd be interested to know.
Now, I want to talk about something different. You remember my 4chan stream?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I went on 4chan and I basically was on poll and it was weird. Weird as fuck.
Yeah.
And oh god, it looked weird.
Are you a big fan of
my
poll?
innocence is already destroyed, so I wasn't really surprised. But anyways.
Well, I think it comes to America, the innocence of all children have been destroyed.
Anyway, basically, I'm Monkey.
Jeremiah, I admire your ability to redirect questions that you don't want and start talking about things that you do want to talk about.
It's a very good tactic. He's avoiding the various traps that Monkey is setting up for him.
That's a skill that's a skill of media relations. It takes a lot of people a long time to learn. That's very. You might have.
I'm telling you, this generation of kids, they're sharp, man. They're a lot more advanced than we were at that age. Well, I'm kind of in between, but now, Jeremiah, speaking of traps, what kind of stuff did you find when you went on 4chan during your live stream? Because I remember it was pretty hard.
Obviously, there was trap stuff on there. There was cringe compilations where people are like, roast this dude for being weird on the beat, and it was hilarious, and I laughed a lot, and I was like, oh my god, why? And I was just so confused. 4chan is such a cool place, and now that we can discover 4chan, let's see what it has to offer.
Now, Jeremiah, what are your opinions on other social media sites? I see you have a Twitter account. I actually follow you on there, but I don't see you tweet that much. Are you that active on Twitter?
When it comes to me personally on Twitter, when it comes to social media, I only actively go for it around every couple of weeks or so.
What's your Twitter account? Go ahead and shout it out. I'll drop it a follow, and maybe the listeners will be interested to know as well.
All right, it is Jeremiah7612 at Jeremiah7612. Go follow me on Twitter. Now that the ad is over.
What are the significance of those numbers? Is that the year you were born, 7612?
No, actually, no.
Oh. Just random numbers then?
Yeah, basically. That would be a good guess, though.
Did you happen to have the time to watch my new video today?
Yes, I did. It was about the monkey box. It was like 40 minutes long.
Yeah, did you think it was too long? A lot of people are saying my video was too long.
No, I'm more of a patient guy.
Oh, good. Thank you. Patience is a virtue.
Anyways, Emplemon, what do you feel about the whole normies and outsiders belief that you have in your meme community?
I don't know. I don't really relate to that community much anymore. Yeah, because you have a fucking girlfriend.
Yeah, you're Chad now. And you're
Fucking
with a
Chad.
Stacy.
Yeah, he's dating a Stacy. The whole normie theory is very complex, and one day I will make a video on it, but not anytime soon. I think you should change your name on YouTube to Emperor Chad.
Yeah, you obviously have become a Chad now. You used to be a virgin, an outsider.
Yeah, well, I guess sometimes people change, you know. What did I say?
NerdCity, you're obviously a Chad.
Yeah. We've gone way beyond selling out for myself. selling out, going out, eating out, tons of outing.
Haha, did you know meme theory is dead?
What do you mean by that?
Meme theory is dead.
As in what? Just the overall holistic theory of memes?
No.
I don't believe it is.
No, the series that you created on your channel is dead.
His girlfriend told him to stop doing it, so he did. Hey, the Donald Trump meme theory is still incredibly valid.
I thought he meant that behind the meme is dead. I was like, oh no. Did he really do it?
Well, yeah, the character behind the meme is dead. The storyline ended where he shot himself. Wow.
So in an alternate
Do we have any other questions for Jeremiah, or should we wrap this bad boy up? I'm interested to hear about the future of Jeremiah.
Yeah.
So we kind of alluded to it earlier, where hopefully you want to get like an editing software and a good computer. When you achieve the desired hardware, Jeremiah, are you still going to use the same style of video where you just do one take and let it all out talking about an issue? Or are you going to start writing scripts and editing, like sort of what Turkey Tom does?
Maybe I'll start writing scripts, and maybe it'll be a mix of the two. You see, maybe I might write something that I'd like to say, and maybe say it, but later on, I start to flow with my own thoughts and opinions on the whole thing. So really, when it comes to later, it'll just be a mix of that. I won't be always scripting. However, most of the time, I probably would be scripting. However, I probably would just be doing a mix between the two, having some words that I've written in there, and then basically, I'm monkey again.
And that's a very interesting strategy. I'd like to see how it works out.
Going with both of them, my own thoughts and opinions, and things I wrote. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that rounds out the hour for the Jeremiah interview.
Let's hope that this gets cut down to a reasonable listen, including. Let's take out all of the questions that were asked to us by Jeremiah, where we clearly showed that we're not very good hosts. The interview the tables were turned.
Yeah.
I gotta say, Jeremiah was rock solid in this interview. He really held his own. Good job, Jeremiah.
Became the alpha.
He's the Chad Supreme. Everybody better watch out. Every YouTuber out there, I do not want to get content critiqued tomorrow.
Oh, it's coming.
So this is a lesson to everyone out there. be nice to Jeremiah. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't go on trends. Don't be repetitive. And make sure your pacing is good. Otherwise, he's going to be coming at you with that content critic, and that's the last thing you want. Just ask Turkey Tom.
Jeremiah, I look forward to hearing your debate against Turkey Tom. That should be a real juice.
All right, stay tuned. Next time on the show, we will have Turkey Tom and Jeremiah in the same call, and hopefully we'll have them settle things once and for all.
I agree to that. Thank you for watching, everybody. This has been the interview with Emplemon, NerdCity, and Monkey Jones.
Oh no, he's doing it again! He just stole our show.
Good talking to you, Jeremiah. Have a good night.
Good talk. So, thank you.
And
Stop.